This is the story of Bobby, Sherilynn, and a youngster, Madyson Jamison, a family of three who drove into the mountains of southeastern Oklahoma one October morning in 2009 and were never seen alive again. 8 days after they vanished, their truck turned up on a remote dirt road with the doors locked and everything still inside. Wallets, IDs, cell phones, coats, and approximately $32,000 in cash stuffed into a bank bag beneath the driver's seat. The family dog, a little terrier named Maisie, had survived inside the vehicle, barely clinging to life after more than a week without food or water. Bobby, Sherilynn, and Madyson were gone. No footprints led away from the truck, no trail cut through the brush, and no explanation presented itself to the more than 300 volunteers who flooded the Sans Bois Mountains to search. 16 teams of cadaver dogs swept the area, while drones flew overhead, and aircraft with thermal imaging scanned the terrain below for days on end. None of it produced a single trace of the missing family. 4 years would pass before anyone found what remained of them, and that discovery only deepened the confusion. Medical examiners could not determine how they died. The manner of death sits classified as unknown. 16 years later, no arrests have been made and no suspects have ever been publicly named. The Jamison family case ranks among the most baffling unsolved mysteries in American true crime, and the deeper you look into the details surrounding their disappearance, the stranger everything becomes. Bobby Dale Jamison was 44 years old. Sherilynn Lehan Jamison, his wife, was 40. Their daughter, Madyson Stormy Star Jamison, had just turned 6. The three of them shared a house on Eufaula Lake in Eufaula, Oklahoma, a quiet community in McIntosh County. On the surface, the family appeared to be getting by. A lakeside home and several timeshares scattered across the United States and Mexico gave the impression of stability. But behind closed doors, that impression fell apart fast. Both Bobby and Sherilynn collected disability benefits and had no other income. A 2003 car accident had left Bobby with chronic back pain that never went away, and Sherilynn carried a bipolar disorder diagnosis that worsened sharply after her sister died from a freak bee sting in 2007. By 2009, every part of their lives seemed to be coming undone at once. Bobby had launched a bitter civil lawsuit against his own father, Bob Dean Jamison, over unpaid proceeds from a gas station sale. That April, Bobby went further and filed for a protective order, alleging that Bob Dean had struck him with a vehicle, had threatened to kill the family, and maintained connections to what Bobby described in his own words as prostitutes, gangs, and meth. The filing included a line that captured the family's state of mind at the time, with Bobby writing that his entire family was severely scared for their lives. A judge dismissed the protective order on May 18, 2009, but the civil case ground forward. Sherilynn, meanwhile, was spiraling on her own. September of 2009, just weeks before the family vanished, brought a hospitalization following a failed suicide attempt. Her 12-year-old son, from a previous relationship, Colton, had already moved to Oklahoma City to live with his father after a custody hearing that July. And, tucked among Sherilynn's belongings, later recovered from the truck, sat an 11-page letter addressed to Bobby, described by investigators as a hate letter, in which she accused him of being a hermit who didn't care about Madyson and declared she wanted a divorce. That was the household that climbed into a pickup truck and drove toward the Sans Bois Mountains on October 8, 2009. The drive from Eufaula to the mountains covered roughly 30 miles, about an hour's worth of winding roads into Latimer County, near the small town of Red Oak. Bobby and Sherilynn planned to inspect a 40-acre plot of land they wanted to buy, with the idea of hauling a large metal storage container from their Eufaula property and living in it on that acreage. They requested no real estate agent be present for the visit. Before they left home that morning, something peculiar happened, and the cameras caught all of it. Bobby's mother, Starlet, had installed security cameras on the property after the ongoing threats from Bob Dean, and the footage from that day shows Bobby and Sherilynn loading the truck over roughly 20 trips between the house and the vehicle. Sometimes they carried items, sometimes they walked back empty-handed, and sometimes, for no clear reason, they stopped moving entirely and just stood there, motionless, staring at nothing with vacant expressions frozen on their faces. Sheriff Israel Beauchamp of Latimer County watched that footage and described their behavior with a single word: trancelike. Both adults looked gaunt and emaciated on camera. At one point, Sherilynn placed a brown briefcase into the vehicle, and that briefcase has never been recovered. A landowner near Red Oak spotted the family on October 8th. After that sighting, nothing. Complete silence. Roughly 8 days later, on approximately October 17th, a pair of hunters riding dirt bikes stumbled across the family's pickup truck, parked on a remote road near a well-pad site south of the town of Kinta. The truck sat locked. Maisie, the family dog, waited inside, severely malnourished and dehydrated but still breathing. Alongside the dog, investigators found the family's wallets, all their identification, their cell phones, their coats, and a bank bag holding approximately $32,000 in cash. Both adults survived on disability with no known employment. Sherilynn's mother, Connie Kokatan, told investigators she knew of no settlement, no inheritance, and no other explanation for that money. Where it came from remains unanswered to this day. Latimer County mounted one of the largest search operations that part of Oklahoma had ever seen once the truck turned up, with no family inside. More than 300 volunteers joined dozens of law enforcement officers and fanned out across the mountains, covering roughly 10 square miles of dense, rugged woodland. 16 cadaver dog teams worked the terrain alongside crews on horses, mules, and ATVs, while aerial drones and fixed-wing aircraft, equipped with heat imaging, swept the canopy from above. The cadaver dogs picked up scent near a water tower in the search area, which prompted investigators to drain the entire structure. Nothing turned up inside. Bobby's mother, Starlet, raised a detail that stuck with everyone involved in the case. Maisie, she explained, was Madyson's little buddy, and the girl would have hollered if her parents tried to leave that dog behind in the car. The meaning was hard to miss. Whatever pulled the Jamisons away from their truck, none of them expected to be gone for long. Weeks became months with no breakthrough. Beauchamp told reporters that leads were not the problem, because the case produced plenty of them. The problem was that every lead pointed in a completely different direction. And that December, approximately 2 months after the family vanished, Bobby's father, Bob Dean Jamison, died at 64. One potential suspect and one potential source of answers disappeared with him. Every layer investigators peeled back from the Jamison family's life exposed something more unsettling than the last. Start with the spiritual warfare. Bobby had gone to the family's pastor, Gary Brandon, and confided that he believed their home was haunted. 2 to 4 spirits, Bobby claimed, appeared on the roof of the house regularly. Bobby asked Pastor Brandon about special bullets that could be used to shoot spirits. Sherilynn told the same pastor that she could see an entire long-dead family living alongside them in the house and believed she possessed the ability to cast out demons. Bobby admitted to Pastor Brandon that he'd read a satanic Bible, not as a believer, but as what he described as an attempt to use it to exorcise spirits from the home. A witch's Bible turned up during a search of the family's house. Sherilynn's best friend, Nikki Sheenold, insisted Sherilynn bought it as a joke, but the occult connections kept stacking up. A friend of Sherilynn's told police she'd conducted seances with Sherilynn, and young Madyson had begun talking regularly to an imaginary friend she called Emily, a presence Sherilynn believed was not imaginary at all, but a malevolent spirit. Sheenold herself admitted the house affected her. Her exact words were, "Whenever I went there, I felt a horrible presence. I would leave feeling so down and depressed." And that's where the handyman enters the picture. Kenneth Bellows had been staying with the family before the disappearance, and in August of 2009, his white supremacist views surfaced after he learned Sherilynn had Native American heritage. Sherilynn's response was to fire her .22 caliber pistol into the ground near his feet and force him off the property at gunpoint. An empty pill bottle bearing Bellows's name turned up in the truck after the family vanished. Police investigated him and cleared him based on a solid alibi. But here's the thing. After a television episode about the case aired, Nikki Sheenold received an anonymous phone call from a woman who claimed she'd once belonged to a white supremacy group. The caller described a book of names, a target list, and told Sheenold she recognized the Jamisons on it. The woman even referenced a unique insignia on Bobby's wedding ring, a detail that would be difficult to guess. The FBI reportedly showed no interest in the tip, and the anonymous claim has never been verified. Sherilynn left her own strange marks. On the family's storage container, she had spray-painted a message reading, "3 cats killed to date by people in this area. Witches don't like their black cat killed." Sherilynn believed neighbors were poisoning her cats and painted the warning to frighten them off. Her mother, Connie Cocotan, added another wrinkle by telling investigators she'd been told Sherilynn was on a cult's hit list. Connie described that part of Oklahoma as known for cult activity, and a 1993 newspaper report had quoted a U.S. Marshal named James Webb discussing cult presence in the region. Connie never identified a specific group by name, and police found no concrete link to any organized cult. And then there was the phone. Bobby's cell, recovered from the abandoned truck, held a photograph of Madyson, apparently taken on the mountain the day the family disappeared. In the image, the girl looks away from the camera with her arms crossed, and family members who saw it described her as looking unhappy. Some of them believed the photo was not taken by her parents. What made the phone even more disturbing was an outgoing call it placed to voicemail on November 12th, more than a month after the disappearance, while the device should have been locked inside the abandoned truck on that remote dirt road. That anomaly has never been explained. 4 years passed, with the case sitting cold and untouched. Sheriff Israel Beauchamp quit the force in 2011 and left the country. Nikki Sherilynn later said the guilt of failing to find Madyson's killer was more than he could carry. Pastor Gary Brandon also left the area shortly after the disappearance and has not spoken publicly about the case since. November 16th, 2013, changed everything and nothing at the same time. 2 deer hunters working through a remote stretch of woods near Stansfield Road in Smokestack Hollow on Panola Mountain came across skeletal remains, roughly 2.5 miles from where the truck had been found 4 years earlier. Investigators from 5 agencies converged on the site, including the Latimer County Sheriff's Office, the Haskell County Sheriff's Office, the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, and the Medical Examiner's Office. Official confirmation came on July 3, 2014. The Oklahoma Medical Examiner identified the remains as Bobby, Sherilynn, and Madyson Jamison. All 3 bodies had been lying face down, positioned side by side. Bobby's skull contained a small hole that initially drew suspicion as a bullet wound, and while police eventually stepped back from that theory, the hunters who made the discovery never wavered in their belief that the hole came from a bullet. Cause of death for all 3 landed as undetermined. Manner of death, unknown. The medical examiner attached one final designation that carried the most weight, stating that the deaths occurred under suspicious circumstances. When asked why earlier searches covering the same ground never found the remains, the OSBI suggested that falling leaves over 4 years may have buried them from view. Beauchamp captured the frustration of this case better than anyone when he told reporters, "Normally you can go through an investigation and one by one start to eliminate certain scenarios. We haven't been able to do that. With this family, everything seems possible. The murder theory carries the most weight among investigators." Beauchamp believed the family encountered someone they recognized and either left the truck willingly or were taken by force. 3 bodies, face down and side by side, points towards something deliberate, and Bobby had documented enemies in a region known for methamphetamine production. Bobby had even reported someone for running a meth lab, but if a robbery or drug killing drove this, the $32,000 left untouched in the truck makes no sense. A drug deal gone wrong fits some of the evidence. Unexplained cash in a household with 0 income, 2 emaciated adults caught on camera moving in a trance-like state, and enough financial desperation to consider living in a metal storage container on raw land. Even Sherilynn acknowledged it was possible the couple attempted a one-off deal under financial pressure. Against that theory, police found no paraphernalia in the home or vehicle and no evidence that the Jamisons used or dealt drugs. Bringing a 6-year-old along to a narcotics transaction also defies any rational explanation. Murder-suicide draws on Sherilynn's hospitalization after a suicide attempt just 1 month prior, the 11-page hate letter, her bipolar diagnosis, and the .22 caliber handgun that was never recovered. None of that overcomes a basic problem. No gunshot evidence appeared on Sherilynn's or Madyson's remains. The weapon should have been found near the shooter's body, and the family turned up nearly 3 miles from the truck. A murder-suicide ending 3 miles into rough terrain, with Bobby's chronic back pain making that kind of hike extremely difficult, strains belief to its limit. Bobby's father drew early suspicion. Bob Dean had threatened to kill the family, had allegedly struck Bobby with a vehicle, and stood to benefit financially from their disappearance given the pending lawsuit. Hiring someone to carry it out was within the realm of what investigators considered. The problem was his alibi placed him in a hospital or rest home at the time, and his brother Jack told investigators that Bob Dean was disturbed but not capable of orchestrating something like that. Bob Dean died in December of 2009, 2 months after the family disappeared, and whatever he knew went with him. Cult involvement, white supremacist targeting, and mental health collapse, leading to death by exposure in 40-degree weather, with no coats, all remain on the table. Every one of those theories has evidence behind it, and every one of them has gaps that no investigator has been able to close. Sherilynn's mother, Connie Cocotan, has never moved from her position. As she put it, there's just no way that Bobby and Sherilynn would ever let anything happen to Madyson unless something had been done to them. The Jamison family case remains officially unsolved and open as of today. No arrests, no named suspects, and no public reward has ever been posted for information, a detail that multiple observers have flagged as unusual for a case that has attracted this level of national attention. Nikki Sherilynn offered words years ago, before the remains were even found, that still cut through everything. She told reporters, "Somebody knows something, and all they have to do is come forward and say, this is where they can be found. At this point, I just want them found. I don't even care what happened." The Jamisons were found eventually. The truth about what happened to them on Panola Mountain in October of 2009 has not been revealed. A family of 3 drove into the woods of southeastern Oklahoma and never came back. And after more than 16 years, the reason why remains locked somewhere in those mountains.